The New Orleans Saints are sitting on a record that looks ugly, but the feeling inside that building is the complete opposite. This is not a team that is checked out on the season. This is a group that still walks on the field like something is starting, not ending. Even at 3 wins and 10 losses, the energy on the sideline, in the huddle, and after big plays feels like a team that knows it is building toward a new identity, not falling apart. You can see that shift in the way Kellen Moore has this offense playing and how the entire roster responds to the new core. When Tyler Shough steps into the huddle, veterans and young players lock in. When Chris Olave wins on the outside, when Devon Vele makes another tough grab over the middle, when Juwan Johnson moves the chains on 3rd down, the reaction is different now. On defense, leaders like Demario Davis and Cameron Jordan are still setting the tone, while the young pieces like Kool-Aid McKinstry and Jonas Sanker are starting to look like long-term pillars. The record says struggle, but the body language says the foundation of the next version of the Saints is already on the field. The real twist is that this entire shift is happening with a quarterback many people did not expect to be the face of this reset. A 26-year-old rookie drafted in the 2nd round, taking over from Spencer Rattler in the middle of a tough year and somehow turning doubt into belief. The roster is still incomplete, the offensive line still has problems, and the schedule has not been kind. But the team keeps fighting around Tyler Shough. The big question now is simple and heavy at the same time. What is he actually doing on the field to make this locker room buy-in so fast? And is it real enough to trust him as the starter going forward? But before we get into that, hit that like and subscribe button for more Saints and all the NFL content. Let's aim for 200 likes on this video. The New Orleans Saints did not hand Tyler Shough an easy script. His first real run at the job came in chaos, when Spencer Rattler was struggling and the offense needed a spark. And he walked straight into tight pockets, dropped passes, and strong defenses. Yet in that stretch, he has stacked real games, not empty numbers. Against Carolina, he went 19 of 27 for 282 yards, with 2 touchdowns and no interceptions, and looked like a calm rookie who had been playing in this system for years. That performance did not feel like a caretaker filling space. It felt like a starter taking control of a division game on the road. If you look only at the season line, 7 total touchdowns to 5 interceptions might not blow you away, but the story changes when you look at when and how those plays happened. In the loss to Atlanta, he had 30 completions on 43 attempts because the ground game never got going, but he still kept drives alive and gave his targets chances to make plays. Against Miami, he started slow, along with the rest of the offense, then turned it around with 26 completions on 38 attempts for 239 yards and 2 passing touchdowns, while taking multiple sacks and still standing in to deliver. Even that first relief appearance against Tampa Bay showed his mindset, with a line that looked modest on paper but came with a clear shift in energy once he stepped on the field. The most dangerous part for the rest of the league is that none of this feels like a lucky hot streak. You can already see small steps every week in his pocket movement, his timing on outbreaking routes, and how quickly he bails out of bad plays without panicking. He is using his legs when protection breaks, but he is just as ready to hang in and look off a safety before ripping a throw to Chris Olave or finding Juwan Johnson on a key 3rd down. He is not playing with a perfect line or a loaded receiver room, but he is still finding ways to move the ball and keep the Saints in games they have no business hanging around in on paper. The real question now is simple. If Tyler Shough can already look this steady in a tough situation, what happens when you actually give him more help at wide receiver and along the interior of the line? When you look at the tape, the first thing that jumps out is how often Chris Olave has to be the grown-up in this receiver room. He already has 76 catches for 811 yards and 5 touchdowns, which puts him near the very top of the league in receptions, even though defenses know the ball is coming his way. He is sudden out of his breaks, he can separate on the outside, and he has become the main target on key downs. The crazy part is that he is doing all of this while often facing extra attention, because defenses do not fear many other wideouts in this group right now. That is where Devon Vele comes in as a quiet bright spot. He is starting to carve out a real role working across the middle, especially in the red zone, winning with size and strong hands. He looks like the kind of player who can live as a reliable 3rd or 4th option in a complete offense, not someone who should be asked to carry the passing game. Behind them, Mason Tipton is doing his job on special teams and fighting for snaps on offense, but the gap between Chris Olave and the rest of the wide receiver room is obvious. Then you look at Juwan Johnson, who has climbed to over 600 receiving yards with 3 touchdowns after a slow start and turned into a trusted target for Tyler Shough, especially on tight window throws and traffic. In the backfield, Alvin Kamara is still the name every defense circles, even as injuries have slowed him down, and Devin Neal is flashing as a young back who runs hard and fits next to a mobile quarterback. Together, they give the Saints just enough balance to keep play action and option looks alive, even when the blocking is not perfect. The problem is simple. You can see that Tyler Shough is raising the level of the players around him, but he is being asked to do it with a thin group at wide receiver and a pass game that has to be perfectly timed to work. If this is what the offense looks like with one main wideout, a tight end on the rise, and a backfield that is still settling, imagine how much more dangerous it gets if the front office finally fixes the interior of the offensive line and lets these weapons operate in a clean pocket. The more you study the New Orleans Saints offense, the more you see that Tyler Shough is fighting a real battle in the pocket on almost every drive. The interior of the offensive line has been the weak spot all season, and it shows up in the sack numbers and in the way he has to move just to get a clean look. Inside pressure arrives fast, not after a long hold, which forces him to slide out of the pocket when he should be climbing up into space. That is not about his feel for the game, it is about guards getting walked back and rushers coming straight through the middle before routes can even develop. There is a big difference between the inside issues and the promise on the edges. When Eric McCoy is healthy at center, he is a steady piece who can handle power and call protections, but his biceps injury and time on injured reserve have left a huge hole. At guard, the play from Cesar Ruiz and the rotation around him has not been good enough for a quarterback who wants to stand tall and attack all levels of the field. On the outside, you can see why the coaching staff is so high on Kelvin Banks and Talius Fuaga. They are young tackles who flash real talent in pass protection and in the run game, and with more reps they could become one of the better bookend pairs in the league. The contrast is sharp. The Saints seem to have their future at tackle, but inside they are still searching for answers. This is where front office decisions start to matter just as much as play calling. Moving on from Trevor Penning, accepting that he did not fit at tackle or guard was a hard but necessary move. Now the next step is to bring in real competition at both guard spots and a reliable backup plan behind Eric McCoy so that Tyler Shough, Alvin Kamara, and Devin Neal are not constantly working uphill. If this team can keep the young tackles growing while fixing the soft spots in the middle, the protection will finally match the potential of the quarterback. And once that happens, it becomes fair to ask a bigger question that reaches outside New Orleans. Where does Tyler Shough really stack up next to the other young passers around the league when he is no longer running for his life on every snap? When you stack Tyler Shough against the rest of this rookie quarterback class, the picture is a lot louder than his box line on Sunday night. Among first-year starters with real volume, he sits near the top in completion rate, time to release, and passer rating. Even while playing in an offense that is still under construction, he is not padding numbers in garbage time, he is throwing with real intent, pushing the ball into tight windows and still finishing with an efficient profile that most first-season passers would love to have. You watch the other young quarterbacks around the league, and very few are dealing with this level of pressure and chaos while still keeping their numbers this clean. The most interesting part is how he gets those results. Tyler Shough is not living off safe throws behind the line and easy checkdowns. His average depth of target sits in a range that shows he is willing to test safeties and corners, which means every throw carries more risk and more reward. Even with that aggressive style, his completion percentage stays high, and his passer rating hangs near the top of the rookie group. He is doing this while working with a thin receiver rotation and an interior line that breaks down far too often. Many of the other first-year quarterbacks are in more stable spots, with cleaner pockets or deeper weapon groups, yet their efficiency does not clearly outshine his. That gap between surrounding help and output is where you start to see his ceiling. So what does that really mean for the Saints? It means you are not just looking at a fun early story. You are looking at a rookie who already measures up as one of the most effective first-year passers in his class, even with clear flaws on the roster around him. If he can post this level of play in a season full of injuries, protection issues, and narrow margins, the real test becomes what happens once the front office finally gives him a complete offense. That is where the next decision comes in. Do you chase another quarterback in the 2026 draft, or do you treat these numbers as a clear sign that it is time to build the roster around Tyler Shough, instead of starting over at the most important position? Inside that Saints locker room, the story around Tyler Shough feels very different from the outside noise. Veterans who have seen everything in this league are treating him like a real answer, not a temporary patch. You can see it in the way the huddle settles when he calls a play, and in how teammates sprint to pick him up after big hits. Guys like Demario Davis and Cam Jordan are still the heartbeat of this team, yet even they react to him like they know the future of the offense runs through number 6. That level of trust does not show up on a stat sheet, but it matters every single drive. Then you look at what they are saying out loud. Tyrann Mathieu has already gone public backing Tyler Shough, telling the world this guy can play and deserves the keys. Demario Davis has talked about how Shough finds ways to save broken plays, convert huge third downs, and stay calm when everything around him looks messy. That is not normal praise for a rookie, especially one drafted outside the first round. Off the field, it is the same story. You see Tyler Shough at Pelicans games with Cam Jordan, at community events giving out bikes and helmets, fully leaning into New Orleans with his family. The fan base is starting to see what the locker room already feels. This is not just a young quarterback passing through. This is someone the city can attach to. All of that feeds straight into the culture that Kellen Moore is trying to build. He talks about resiliency, mental toughness, and finding guys who do not tap out when the record looks rough. Tyler Shough fits that idea perfectly. He has already fought through college, injuries, media doubt, and a difficult first-year situation, and he still shows up like every game is a chance to prove something new. When your leaders on defense trust your rookie quarterback, when your community embraces him, and when your coach believes his mindset matches the long-term plan, you reach a turning point. At that stage, the real question for the front office is no longer whether they can replace Tyler Shough in the 2026 draft. It is whether they can afford to waste that belief by chasing another quarterback instead of finally fixing the roster around him. The New Orleans Saints already made their bet at quarterback when they used a second-round pick on Tyler Shough and kept Spencer Rattler on his rookie deal behind him. That is two young passers on team-friendly contracts at the same time, which is a huge luxury in a league where most teams are paying veteran money at that spot. Using another premium pick in 2026 on a new quarterback would not just crowd the room, it would slow down the rebuild in every other area that clearly needs help. When you review how much work this roster still needs at wide receiver, along the interior of the offensive line, and on the edge, it becomes pretty clear. The fastest way to waste the progress Tyler Shough has made is to start all over again instead of leaning into the advantage his contract gives you. That is why the next draft and free agency cycle should be all about lifting the pieces around him. On offense, Chris Olave needs a running mate who can demand attention on the outside, so defenses cannot load up on him every single week. Devon Bailey has shown he can be a strong complementary option, and Juwan Johnson has stepped up at tight end, but there is still room for a true difference maker at receiver. Inside the line, new starters at guard would help Eric McCoy, Kelvin Banks, Taliese Fuaga, Alvin Kamara, and Devin Neal all look better from day one. On defense, you can see the future forming with Kool-Aid McKinstry, Jonas Sanker, Alontae Taylor, Brian Bresee, Carl Granderson, Chase Young, and the leadership of Demario Davis and Cameron Jordan, yet more young pass rushers and depth are still needed. The Saints also have a real decision with Spencer Rattler. They can keep him as quality insurance behind Tyler Shough or trade him to a team like Pittsburgh or Minnesota for more picks, but both paths are about supporting the current core rather than wiping it away. All of this ties into how the front office views the next wave of quarterback prospects. There is no clear sign that the upcoming class is loaded with instant franchise saviors who justify passing on elite help at receiver or on the line. What you already have is a rookie quarterback who has shown growth, toughness, and production in a very tough situation, plus a roster full of young talent that would only get more dangerous if you pour resources into their support. That is the real tension heading into 2026. Do you chase another mystery at quarterback, or do you commit to building the best possible version of this team around Tyler Shough and see how far this core can go once the roster is finally deep and balanced? The answer to that question will define what having something with him truly means, and that is where the future picture of the Saints starts to get really interesting. The crazy part about the New Orleans Saints right now is that the biggest question might already be answered without most people noticing. For years, it felt like this team was stuck in the middle. Not bad enough to reset, not good enough to scare anyone, always wondering who the next face of the offense would be. With Tyler Shough, that conversation sounds different. You can feel it every time he takes the field. The scoreboard might not look pretty yet, but for the first time in a while, fans can watch a game and say, if this group grows together, this could actually turn into something real. Having something with Tyler Shough does not mean expecting him to walk in and be the best quarterback in football. It means you finally have a player at that spot who gives you a real path forward. A season from now, success is not just sneaking into the playoffs out of nowhere. Success is seeing Chris Olave, Devon Bailey, and Juwan Johnson producing in a more polished passing game, watching Alvin Kamara and Devin Neal work behind a stronger interior line, and seeing Kelvin Banks and Taliese Fuaga take the next step at tackle. On defense, it means Kool-Aid McKinstry, Jonas Sanker, Alontae Taylor, Brian Bresee, Carl Granderson, Chase Young, Demario Davis, and Cameron Jordan, playing in a system that no longer has to carry every single week because the offense can actually hold its own. That is what a stable quarterback unlocks. He turns a rebuild from a vague idea into a clear plan you can see on the field. So, what does the next stage really look like? It looks like a team that aims for 6 to 8 wins next season, not as a ceiling, but as a step in the climb, knowing that every extra piece you add around Tyler, Shough raises that ceiling even higher. It looks like a front office that uses its picks to add weapons and protection instead of searching for another answer at quarterback. And it looks like a fan base that can finally stop arguing about who should start between Tyler Shough and Spencer Rattler, and start asking a bigger question. If this is what the Saints look like with a young core and a rookie quarterback still learning on the job, how dangerous can they become once that core hits its prime and the roster around him is fully loaded?